I was a long-time Windows user and I've had a chance to use macOS for a while, but I've met Linux 5 years ago, and even though sometimes I try, I cannot resist from daily driving Linux. Why? As someone who has tried all operating systems, why do I still persistently prefer Linux? The purpose of this video isn't to convince you to use Linux. Maybe you'll understand how good Linux really is and give it a chance, but I am aware that not everyone can use Linux. So why can't I use Windows or macOS unlike you? Let's take a look at why Linux is simply better. I want to start with customization, but don't roll your eyes and get bored, because when I talk about Linux customization, I'm not just talking about beautiful and incredibly different looking desktops. I mean very simple things. For example, in Linux, you can assign any keyboard key as a system or application shortcut. I can switch my workspace with Super 1, 2, 3, 4 keys. With Super Shift 1, 2, 3, 4, I can move windows to different workspaces. I can open the terminal with Super Enter. I can open my file manager with Super Shift Enter. You might say, what's the big deal? Well, you can't do the same in Windows or macOS. You can't assign global system settings or application shortcuts. You can try with third-party software like AutoHotkey or Wintoys, but it usually doesn't work correctly. For instance, I can't change the workspace switching key in Windows. After using Linux for a long time, when I returned to Windows, I was so surprised by this situation. Or this simple feature of being able to move a window by holding the Super key and clicking anywhere on the window, which exists in all Linux desktop environments, but not in Windows. You need a software like AltSnap, which might not always work properly. The main reason I use Linux is that it allows you to customize your desktop like this. Linux doesn't just allow you to adjust your desktop appearance as you like. It lets you change even the most basic operating system behavior. Of course, some of you might say, unlike me, you don't like that much customization. What then? Well, first of all, you don't have to use Linux, of course, and if you switch to Linux, you don't have to customize everything to the extreme. That freedom is just there for you. If you want it, you can take it. PC stands for personal computer. With Linux, my personal computer truly becomes personal. Another important point for me is being free in Linux. By free, I mean being able to choose whatever software packages I want. For example, there are many file managers in Linux, each with their own specific features, and regardless of which Linux I'm using, I can choose any file manager I want. Or I can choose from dozens of terminals, dozens of desktop environments, dozens of distributions that suit me. Of course, this creates a paralysis effect for Linux newcomers. They can't take a step forward thinking about which is the best among so many options. The Linux community shares some blame here. Even under a simple topic like which distribution should I use, you see dozens of different distribution suggestions. I recommend not confusing newcomers that much. While having dozens of different options might be problematic for beginners, for someone familiar with this world, having so many options is liberating and comforting. Think about it, people who like customization use KDE Desktop and packages. People who like simplicity use GNOME. Those specifically working in production can use Ubuntu Studio. For privacy and high-level security, you can use Tails OS or Qubes OS, and these are just at the distribution level. After installing all these distributions, you can manually change many of the basic software you can use. What other operating system has this kind of freedom? None. Another reason I use Linux is that all its basic software is free software. We call a software free software when it's completely open source and can be modified and redistributed by individuals. The difference from open source is that often open source licenses only allow you to modify the code, but not redistribute it. Meaning you change the code for yourself but can't give it to the others. Free software licenses truly allow you to modify, use, and redistribute the software. I love that Linux and its software around it are completely free, and because Linux consists of free software, it develops incredibly fast. For example, Windows' file manager got tabs last year. All Linux file managers had tabs for years. While many AAA games wouldn't work on Linux in 2014, fast forward to 2024, and almost all AAA games work on Linux. You can contribute to making all this happen. Since everything is free software, you can read and modify the source code. There are many developers using Linux, and these people contribute to the code in their spare time. And be sure that in 2034, Linux will be much more advanced than it is now. If you're a Linux user watching this video, I recommend donating to your favorite desktop environment or free software. Your donations are important to keep these applications alive. Another reason I continue to use Linux is privacy. Today, all other operating systems collect incredible amounts of data from you. Under the guise of analysis, they scrutinize how you use your computer and send it to their systems. In return, they present you with targeted advertisements. I don't like my personal computer tracking me, scrutinizing what I do, and sending it to a centralized server beyond my control. As individuals, we should have a right to privacy. And if you say, I have nothing to hide, arguing that you don't care about the right to privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different than saying that you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say. Of course, there are certain settings and software in Windows to improve your privacy, but at the end of the day, since Linux is completely free software, we know what it's doing in the background. Linux distributions and desktop environments don't collect telemetry. If they do, it's not enabled by default. They ask your permission to enable it. The choice is yours. In contrast, telemetry in Windows and macOS is presented as if it's a feature benefiting you. Yes, telemetry can benefit users when used correctly, but if you look at the telemetry collected by Windows and Mac, you can see how much they've gone overboard for their own profit. Of course, at the end of the day, this is a matter of values. As someone who values personal privacy, I prefer and love using Linux. But I am aware that not everyone values their personal privacy as much as I do, and I can't force you on this matter. I can only explain my perspective. The terminal, which many people's nightmare in Linux, is one of the main reasons I love Linux. Yes, I love using and managing my computer through this black screen because it allows me to do my work 10 times faster. Thanks to this black screen, I better understood how computers work. Through this black screen, I learned how to manipulate computers more effectively and learned to write scripts. It's definitely not for everyone and shouldn't be, but people who love learning about and understanding computers will love the terminal. In today's modern Linux, you don't have to use a terminal. There's a graphical interface for almost everything, but if you encounter a problem, someone trying to help you might ask you to open the terminal because understanding and solving problems through the terminal is much easier. If you're someone who loves understanding and learning about computers, I recommend gradually warming up to the terminal and viewing it as a learning process. The package manager was one of the things that left me in awe when I first switched to Linux. As someone who had used Windows for years, I was used to searching for software on Google and installing them manually. When updating, each application would update through its own mechanisms. When I switched to Linux, it was fascinating to see all system and application packages updating simultaneously just by typing sudo apt upgrade. Because Linux has package managers and you can download all software from store, there is less chance of virus infection. You can find and install software much faster. Of course, Windows has improved in this regard over time. Now it has its own store, a package manager called Winget to download packages, but it's obvious that these were written and integrated into the system much later compared to Linux. Since package managers are a primary priority on Linux, the software store you use actually uses package manager in the background. Compared to that, the Windows store doesn't use Winget in the background, or Windows applications always maintain their own internal update mechanisms. I'm sure many Windows users still install software by searching on Google. In Linux, this was never the case from the beginning. Nowadays, with universal package managers like Flatpak being integrated into Linux, all applications appear directly in your store. You can install, remove with one click, and update everything with just one click. So let's say you switch to Linux. Now what? You probably don't know much about Linux applications and the ecosystem. You're in luck though. I just made a video featuring tons of useful Linux applications in an iceberg format. You can watch that video by clicking right here.